Let's gossip about the latest NFL headlines. We're going to put a little fantasy or perhaps a sportsbook spin on them, aka NFL spin move. Okay, so guys, the Packers, of course, have Aaron Rodgers back in the fold this season. Doesn't mean he isn't going to light up the front office during pressers, but something he's not mad at the front office about is Green Bay bringing back one of his former buddies in wide receiver Randall Cobb. Now, Cobb, coming over from the Texans, had the best years of his career in Green Bay playing with Rodgers. So, Geoff, what's your fantasy outlook for the 31-year-old, that's kind of old, back with the Pack?
Yeah,
not for the earth, not old for the earth, just old.
Football years, Jesse. You're right. It's old in football years. Look, Randall Cobb is the epitome of this. Might actually be like a very solid real life addition for the Green Bay Packers, just because of his experience, his connection with Rodgers. It's kind of a nothing burger for fantasy purposes. I mean, this is a player who's broken 1,000 yards rushing or receiving, even in his prime once. He had, even with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this is a player who hasn't seen over 100 targets in like 6 years. Randall Cobb's durability has been an issue throughout his career as well. You know, the last time we kind of saw Randall Cobb be something for fantasy was in Dallas. He did average 15.1 yards per reception, but I really feel like you look back at what he did with Houston last year, you know, more in lines of like 10 to 12 yards per reception. If you get 600 yards and 4 touchdowns from Randall Cobb this year, that's pretty much what I would expect. This is a guy maybe you could look to in best balls to stack with Aaron Rodgers, but he's not really someone that should be on your radar at all. I'd still rather take a shot with Allen Lazard if you're looking to someone down the depth chart in the Green Bay Packers organization for wide receiver.
Reid, do you agree? Not really a factor?
Yeah, he's not. But I think it's part and parcel of why Aaron Rodgers is back, right? Is that was part of probably the deal, a sign of good faith. But for fantasy purposes, it doesn't really mean anything. Maybe a bye week flyer, right? You put in Randall Cobb and you can get you a decent floor, but that's just it. We have no idea. I mean, Geoff mentioned Allen Lazard. I think he's not that far down on the depth chart. I think what we saw with him last year was great, right? He just couldn't stay off the injury list for a handful of weeks. But when he was on there, he was a guy that, you know, that Rodgers trusted, that wanted to get more reps in. Robert Tonyan is obviously there. Aaron Jones is still going to be a factor in the backfield. So I think this is more a good faith signing for Aaron Rodgers to get back in the deal, sort of to sweeten the pot. But other than that, I don't see him anywhere better than a wide receiver 4. And again, those bye week flyers.
Right, a guy who's unhappy, Dolphin star corner Xavier Howard, doesn't like how he's been treated in Miami. He's requested a trade saying, I don't feel valued or respected. Now, Miami's win total on the DK Sportsbook is set at 9.5 wins. Reid, would you consider betting the under here at plus 105 if Howard doesn't play for the Dolphins this year?
Not really. And here's why, Jesse. I think when you take a look at what they did last year, right, at 10 wins, in those 6 losses, these guys gave up an average of over 300 yards passing. Their defense did. So even though Xavier Howard and Byron Jones are solid quarterbacks, probably the best tandem in the NFL, or arguably the best tandem in the NFL right now, their defense still has a ton of work to do. And I think it's more so, look, Xavier Howard led the league in interceptions at 10, led the league in pass deflections at 20. But at the same time, right, and they blitzed quite a bit. Miami, their defense blitzed quite a bit. It's a matter of how are they getting to the quarterback and are they stopping these guys from scoring touchdowns? Now, the passing defense was solid, but I don't necessarily know how much Xavier Howard affects the line, so to speak. It's going to be more about Tua. It's going to be more about this offense and the weapons that he has on the offensive side that I think are going to propel him and this team forward to reach over that 9.5, that 10-win mark, essentially. And we have that extra game to play and to keep in mind as well. It's a matter of, is Xavier Howard happy? Like, he signed the extension, and he's one of the higher paid cornerbacks in the league, but Byron Jones actually is paid more. And maybe that's why he's getting a little peeved. And we see this now, this move with these players having more autonomy, having more control over their situation. It's just a matter of, you know, is this offense, I believe, going to be a factor more so than defense, because the defense wasn't that much of a factor in their losses.
Geoff, would you consider betting the under at plus 105 if Howard doesn't play?
I already kind of like the under on the Miami Dolphins. This is a defense that led the league in turnovers last year. That's a very, very high variable stat. And Reid kind of mentioned this, but they still allowed a lot of yards, even in the passing game, even with two top cornerbacks. If for some reason Xavier Howard just doesn't play well, or maybe sits out for a bit, I think it's a huge step back for this defense. I'm not convinced that Tua is a guy you want to be betting on for the over as well. I really like the under. This kind of news just makes me want to bet it more. And I think a plus odds under on the Dolphins is something I'm pretty interested in. Yeah.
All right, Reid. Well, Henry Ruggs of your Las Vegas Raiders said he gained 13 pounds this offseason, and he wants to have more production, not only in the passing game, but as a runner as well. So what are your expectations for the wide receiver in year 2 with Derek Carr and company?
Yeah, Jesse, 13 pounds in football and on earth is a lot of pounds in earth. But look, Henry Ruggs, he gained a lot of pounds. Derek Carr loves him. This is what we get in the offseason is this guy's working out. We see Chris Carson working out like a maniac. But Henry Ruggs, the reason why that you kind of want to temper your expectations, especially me, with this, is that what does he plan to do, right? If he plans to put on more weight to get more of these contested balls, maybe run across the middle, maybe run routes that aren't just blowing off the top on defenses, then that means Darren Waller gets less production right across the middle. And that's what you want if you're a Raiders fan and if you're the Raiders, is Darren Waller being the focal point of this offense. It's less about Henry Ruggs and more about this offensive coordinator, this offensive side, getting him in the right positions. We know Derek Carr is not a guy who throws it deep downfield. And we know the Raiders, like every other offense in the NFL, is a copycat league. They want to be the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Not necessarily Tampa Bay Bucks, but they want to be the Chiefs, to have Waller and Ruggs be the Kelsey and Tyreek Hill in the AFC. Now, these guys are nowhere near that, but at the same time, you do like that he's coming in with a little more bulk. Maybe he gets that number 1 wide receiver moniker, especially when Smokey Brown inevitably gets hurt, right? This guy is always injured. If that's the case, and Henry Ruggs in those mid rounds for season long, Jesse, I think is someone that she might want to consider, just because that ceiling is extremely high, but know that floor could be wide receiver 5 at any given week.
Geoff, high hopes for bulky Henry Ruggs?
No, I don't have high hopes. Like, I think the last news you want from a wide receiver is he's training to be a running back. I don't really understand it, quite frankly. Look, and you really have to look at the Raiders offense. Darren Waller had 146 targets last year. That's not going down. Like, it's just not. He is the main focus point of that offense. Nelson Aguilar led the wide receiver crew with only 83 targets. Some of those could go to Ruggs, but he's competing with John Brown and even Bryan Edwards. I think the theme, if you're targeting a Raiders wide receiver, should be take the cheapest guy in terms of valuation. That's probably going to be either Brown or Edwards, who aren't training to be a running back this offseason. So I'm not really big on Henry Ruggs. I didn't really like what I saw last year. And I'd rather take one of those cheaper guys in terms of season long.
Right, Steelers GM Kevin Colbert said the team would be disappointed if first-round pick Najee Harris wasn't a 3-down back this season. So, Geoff, where should people be looking to draft Harris among running backs this season?
Yeah, I think Harris is going to be like a really polarizing pick. I mean, in one term, he's a rookie, and, we just don't know. I mean, Benny Snell could still be involved. I mean, Mike Tomlin hasn't always gone with the talent in Pittsburgh in his time, but you look at where he's going, right around RB13 right now. I mean, I think that's fine. You can take him in front of, I think taking Najee Harris in front of guys like Antonio Gibson, perhaps DeAndre Swift. I think Harris is more likely to get a bigger workload than players like that. And I think that alone probably boosts him in front of those players. Also, we have a Pittsburgh offense where, yeah, they didn't finish the season well, but this was still like a top 15 offense in terms of points produced, yards produced. They're going to score some touchdowns. So I think Najee Harris definitely deserves to be in front of players like that, right around RB12. But this isn't a player I would get too high on, just because, again, he's a rookie. We don't know exactly what the workload's going to be. Don't go reaching for him too much is the only thing I'd say on Harris. Definitely looks good, but you don't want to start taking in front of guys like Mixon and Chubb.
Reid, does around RB12 sound right to you?
That's too high. Geoff I want to be in leagues with Geoff where he's not taking Harris. And look, there might be some PTSD of people who took CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, last year, and we saw what happened. And to Geoff's point, that is the risk that inherently is with rookies, right? But what we've seen with the Steelers, and you got to treat every situation differently, because I think these two situations are different, is that the Steelers are very comfortable giving their running back the bell cow role. I always have trouble saying that. Bell cow role, where they can get 18 to 20 touches a game. And when do you want to use? This is a narrative that Garion has helped me formulate in my process of getting these running backs. Is you want to get these guys young, you want to get these guys right out of college or at the tail end of their contract, like a Derrick Henry, for instance. Is that's when they have the freshest legs, or that's when the organization says we want to utilize this guy as much as possible. They spend a first round pick on a running back. And even though Benny Snell is talented, he's not going to be a guy like Najee Harris. This guy can get you, the 4 to 5 catches per game. As a running back, that is huge. I have him in the top 10 of RBs and right around overall, like number 14 or 15, because of what the potential high end side is. And if he doesn't work out, there's a lot of running backs out there in the mid rounds that you could try and get. I know you don't want to screw up and your first couple of picks in season long, but this guy could be, one of the top 5 receiver or top 5 running backs just based on the usage alone.